Hebrews 9:16. It said, for where a testament is, there must of necessity be the death of the testator. Are you following this? Next verse. It said, for a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength. Why the testator liveth? What is telling you here is that the covenant that God had with man was effected when Jesus paid the price in death. Because every one of us failed. We couldn't keep it. So Jesus came to keep it on our behalf. So he was the one who fulfilled the claims of divine justice. And it was at his death that he finalized the contract of the covenant. See, if you study covenants, you're going to find two things. The first thing about a covenant is that two parties must sign an agreement. And that agreement is bound by an oath. Now, when God signed that contract with Abraham, in Genesis chapter 18, if you read from verse 6 to verse 18, you will discover that when the agreement was to be signed, Abraham didn't sign. The Bible said when it was evening, they caught the animal that they used for the covenant. Because the way they did it in ancient time is that you carry the animal, you divide it into two. So both parties will walk through. The blood will stain them as their oath. They are taken to keep the demands of the covenant. When time came for Abraham and God to walk through, only God walked through it. You know what God did there? He converted that covenant to a will. Because when it's a will, one person signs and the other person enjoy the benefits. So the way the other person receives it is by believing. This is why Abraham didn't keep any rule. Abraham believed God. Because Abraham didn't sign the contract. God alone signed the contract. So the covenant became a will. And then when Paul was talking about this same will, he said God was not talking to all the children of Abraham. In Galatians chapter 3, if you read from verse 15 to 16, he said God was talking about his child, which was Christ, one person. So Christ was the one that the promise was meant for. Now when Christ showed up, the covenant now reverted back to an agreement. So Christ had to keep the demands of justice. This is why Christ must die for sin. This is why everything God demanded, Christ must do. And Jesus said, lo, it is written in the volumes of the book, I came to do thy will. Even when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, if it were possible, let this cup pass me by. He said, yet not my will, but thine. Because now he needed to keep the covenant. It was not just a will. For him, it was an agreement that he must keep. The moment Christ kept that agreement, the Bible said, every one of us who believe in Christ became the children of God. So God is not negotiating with us. And that's why I gave you an illustration of myself and my wife. I said I'm in covenant with my wife, but my son is the child of that covenant. My son is not swearing fidelity with me. I swore the oath of fidelity between myself and my wife. But my son is a product of the oath that we swore to ourselves. Are you seeing this now? If I give to my wife, it's a responsibility that the covenant mandates. But if I give to my son, it's a responsibility that love and fatherhood mandate. Are you following this? So my son did not sign any agreement with me. My son will only believe in me as his father. Now, you now ask the question, which is why I'm dealing with this. Why then should my son practice the covenant? Because the transaction going on between me and my wife is based on moral values, which defines who we are. If my son does not practice it, he will not grow in morality. So I will not lie to my wife because the covenant negates it. I will not hide anything from my wife because the covenant negates it. I will not be unfaithful to my wife because the covenant negates it. When my son begins to grow, I will also teach him honesty. Not because he's following a rule, but because that must be his nature. If my son is growing, I will teach him fidelity. Not because if he's unfaithful, he will be cursed. But he has to learn fidelity because that's the character that defines our covenant. So for we who are Christians, we are not practicing covenant because if we don't, we'll be cursed. Jesus has taken the curse. We are not practicing covenant because if we don't, God will kill us. Jesus has already been killed. We are not practicing covenant because if we don't, we will fail. Jesus has already taken every shame on our behalf. But we are practicing the covenant now Because it's the nature of God that defines the agreement. And if we don't practice the covenant, we will not grow to maturity. And if we don't grow to maturity, there are many things God cannot commit to us. Because in the new covenant, prosperity is an entrustment. And so God will entrust prosperity to you to the degree that you prove yourself mature in God. So God is in covenant with Christ. The Lord said to my Lord, sit down at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool. So the agreement was between the Father and the Son. But when Jesus died, I came out. When Jesus resurrected, I manifested. So I am the product of that covenant. This is why the Bible calls us heirs of the promise. Heirs of the promise. Heirs of salvation. Heirs of the blessing. So we inherit it. Are you following this? I'm saying this to clear the ground. Because when I start talking about covenant practice, don't make the mistake of thinking from the line of Moses. That, oh, if I don't do this, I'm cursed. No, you are not cursed. Jesus has already been cursed. But if you don't do it, you are not mature. Things cannot be entrusted to you. Are you following this? Don't view this from the line of the law. That, oh, if I don't give, I am finished. Devourers, curses, famine. All of that doesn't work anymore. Jesus has taken it. But it's in your engaging it that God can trust you. Because now God knows you are mature to handle kingdom things. Because the covenant is also the character of God. That's what defines the agreement. Do you follow that? Does it make sense to you? So the Bible said we are what? Children of the covenant. That means we inherit God's blessings. We don't earn God's blessings. We inherit it. But everything we inherit is levels of maturity that determines our possession. Are you following this? Are you following this? The one who earned, the one who qualified, the one who passed the test of God was Jesus. But you have become an heir. Now that you are an heir, it belongs to you. However, it is maturity that determines it. Everything I have belongs to my son, but I can't give him everything now. If I give him the car now, he will kill himself. I can't give him certain amounts of money now. As I am now, I can give my son millions, but I can't give him now. What will he do with it? If I give him, he will implicate me. He can carry it and go out and start playing with it. And armed robbers will say, oh, there's money here like this. And they will cause damage. If I give him, he can even tear it. Something that should, you know why? Because it's not yet mature. That's why the Bible said the heir, so long as he's a child, is not different from a servant. So the point I'm making is that all the blessings of God are already yours. But most of us are children. So God cannot entrust us with kingdom wealth. It is God's plan, but it will take maturity to command it. The protocol I will teach you here are covenant-oriented protocols. But I need you to understand that the reason you engage them is because of maturity. Not because if you don't, you will be cursed. It's the man who is in covenant with God that if he doesn't keep it, that will be cursed. Not because if you don't, you'll be killed. It's the one who is in covenant with God that if he doesn't, he'll be killed. You are a child of that covenant. The reason you are keeping it is because the character of that covenant is your DNA now. So your doing it is your growth in the things of the Spirit. Does that make sense? So having explained this, let me go quickly to the protocol of prosperity. The protocol for prosperous living. This is what many Christians don't know. And this is why they struggle. If you know this and you engage this, you will prosper. And brothers and sisters, I beg you, prosper. You get why? If you don't prosper, even your conviction, you may lose it. Oh, I'm telling you. See, I've seen many people burning for God. But certain things happen, they began to question. Is this thing real? I've seen people before who were consistent with God. A point came, lack of transport fare made them to stop coming to church. There are many people who should have been here. They can't pay for their transport fare. And they cannot even buy data to watch it. Not because they don't love God. And because they can't transport themselves and can't afford data. After 1 month, the thing will no longer be in their heart. They will now replace it with something else. And before you know what is happening, they are in one corner smoking. And then you are wondering, how did you get here? Poverty brought him there. Not the devil. Lack brought him there. I've seen many people who went into wrong acts because they couldn't take it anymore. He can endure hunger, but he has a 3-year-old child who is crying and nobody is willing to help. He has no choice. He had to do something. That's why he stole for the first time. Not because of himself, but he can't see his child going through pains of hunger. See, prosper, my brother. It has a reason. Without prosperity, you can't advance God's kingdom. Without prosperity, even your faith can be challenged. Without prosperity, you can't live a quality life. You cannot. And without prosperity, there are many things you can't do. See, there are many people burning with fire to win souls. They don't have the resources. They want to win more souls than we can ever imagine. But one crusade cost several millions. Several millions. So they cannot organize any massive event for God. Not because they don't have the heart. They don't have the means. This is why prosperity is a must. And this is why God puts it as part of our everyday life. We need to prosper. And don't prosper in a season. Don't prosper once in a while. Prosper always. There is a system that increases a man daily. Your prosperity should be daily. And there are forces in God that makes that happen. The question is, are you willing to engage them?
When you hold my hands, everything